Good morning. That was better than giving you seen. It's not a competition. It is a little bit. All this week, I've been going back and forth between Pastor Mike's house and my house, and it's been a privilege to help him get settled in and basically do a complete remodel of the home in 7 days. And each time I go into his neighborhood, I'm confronted with this. It's a silhouette that's attached to a house. Maybe you've seen these. But it's a soldier on one knee holding a rifle in front of a cross. And every time I go past that, I think, I need to take a picture of that so that I can put it up here. As you see, it's not there. Every time I went by it, I thought, I need to take a picture of that so I can use it on Sunday. You'll see it's not there. Good intentions are only good for that. Intentions. We have to be doing something, or our good intentions are a waste of time. Memorial Day is usually a time where we mix up Veterans Day and Memorial Day. It's usually when we make a train wreck of both holidays. The reason that I say that is I'm absolutely bothered by the celebration of veterans on Memorial Day. Not because I have a problem with our veterans, but because our veterans are not who we should be remembering on Memorial Day. It's almost offensive to our veterans. Now, they'll never tell you that. But that's the truth. That they know that what they came back to meant they left people behind. And Memorial Day is about the people that were left behind. So we're to remember those who fought and died in service to our country. I don't want you to get out of this that I have a problem with Memorial Day, because I don't. It bothers me that we mix them up. I've got many friends and a brother in the military, and I know what they encounter when they come home. That life isn't the same when they come home as it was when they left, no matter what they left. And we like to have this image of 18 to 20-year-old boys and girls being sent off to a foreign land to fight a battle. And we like to call that our military. And they didn't have a wife, and they didn't have children, and they didn't have careers or anything like that. What we want to think of is that these were the people who were born and raised to fight. And they were willing and ready to give their life. And to some extent, there's some truth there. But the vast majority of our military are people who are there because they love their country and they're willing to do anything. They would be just as happy to stay home with their newborn baby and their wife or husband and run a computer or a lighting system or something like that at home that keeps everything moving forward. But when their country calls and they're told what to do, they step up, they step out, and they go and do what needs to be done. And for the large part, many of us don't know that feeling. Not because we don't have pride in our country, and not because we have some desire to hide from that kind of an obligation, but because we've never really experienced what it feels like to be willing to give it all. Memorial Day became a holiday that recognized both the veterans and the dead, because it's easier to remember the people who came back alive. It's easier to look and touch and say, this person was willing to fight, and they came back victorious. It's much harder to be in the remembering mode of the ones that didn't come back. I'd like to tell you today that it's a perfect time while you're in a reflection mode and while you're thinking of the sacrifices that some made for our freedom, that this is the perfect time to also reflect on what our Savior died for us. Today I'm going to take you through a little bit of an unusual portion of Scripture. If you have your Bibles or your phones or whatever method you're going to use to follow along, it's also going to be on the screen. I think all of it's going to be there. I'm not 100% sure. But Joshua chapter 4, starting with verse 1 all the way to 9. In verse 1 it says, "When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, I've read that over and over again. I want to say Joseph so bad and my mind knows not to. The Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men that he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe. And he said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you in the future when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood. And they were there to this day. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you that our country stands as a free place where we can openly share your word and discuss what you have called us to remember. Lord, today as we open up your word and we look for similarities between our Memorial Day and what you've called us to, Lord, we ask that you would make it perfectly clear to us, that all would see your face and your light. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So here's the scenario. Moses is dead, the great leader of the church. The first great leader of the church is dead. And Joshua is charged with the responsibility to take Israel from where they are to the promised land and cross that river. Now you can't really see it in that picture. Oh, I thought I had another one, but it looks like I saved that one to be the picture for you. So the Jordan River runs right up from what we see as Israel and the West Bank all the way down to the Dead Sea. There's just this one problem with taking all of a country's people from one place to another, is that they had to cross this river. The Jordan River is a very wide river. It's better suited for whitewater rafting than it is for crossing on foot. It moves pretty quick, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Making sure everybody's with me here. There's no real easy way to say, you, 12 tribes, cross this river. But that was his job. to get an entire nation across the river. So God provides in a way that is, unique. He dams up the river, and he leaves Israel with a dry path across the river. Now think about this for a moment. The Jordan River at this time would have likely been at flood stage. That means not just up to the sides, but a little bit more. I know a few of you have lived here a long time, and I've heard all my life, I've always, pretty much most of my life lived in Pinellas County, and I always heard the Hillsborough River is at flood stage, and I never really knew what that meant. I got a chance to look at that not too long ago, what that flood stage of the Hillsborough River looks like. And I imagine what that might look like for the people that wanted to cross this river. So here's what I come up with. The people of Israel, remember, they're a stiff-necked people. This is the way they were described in the Bible. A stiff-necked people who didn't want to listen to the Lord or to good instruction. So they were a bunch of complainers. When my wife takes our children out to walk around the neighborhood, she calls them Israelites because they pretty much start in from the very beginning. It's hot. How far are we going? Are we almost there yet? This is what I imagine is happening. They get right up to the edge of the riverbank, and Joshua says, okay, you guys did such a terrible job listening to Moses. Now that he's dead, I'm going to be in charge. So take everything you have and go that way. And they looked at him and said, there's a bunch of water there. You may be the worst leader that we could ever have. And then Joshua prays. And he asks for the Lord to provide a way across the river as he was instructed to cross. And God pushes the water aside. Not just they walked across the floor of the river. The scripture says they walked on dry land. For them to walk on dry land without any intervention from God, they would have needed that river to be dammed up for a period of about 14 days to walk on dry land. They didn't walk in muck, and they weren't constantly pulling their rain boots out. They were walking on dry land. Land that was so dry that they were later instructed, pick up some of the rocks because we're going to need them where we're going. Completely dry land. This is a major miracle. God provides in His way. The only way that we ever recognize as a miracle is when God goes, yeah, that's not a problem. Because we have a hard time accepting that the air that we breathe is a miracle. We have a hard time accepting that just basic things like being born in a free country is a miracle. Our country is still kind of an experiment, right? When we talk to people from England, they say, well, when your colonies are ready to come back, you can. Still kind of an experiment. But God saw fit for each of us to be born here. This minor miracle, as we would call it, where we're born, the Israelites got to experience as a major miracle as they walked across on dry land. Note there the size of the stones that the men are carrying in this picture, because that's going to come up later. Joshua told them to grab large stones. Have any of you ever picked up a river rock? One of you, great. I would just advise against it. River rocks are particularly heavy, smooth, and slippery. No matter where you get them from. They stay wet forever, it seems like. We had one that we had set up aside, and it hadn't got wet for months, and we went to pick it up and move it at my dad's cabin, and when we picked it up, it was round, heavy, and slippery. So here he tells these 12 leaders, each of you, go grab a large rock. but specifically, grab a large rock from where the altar sat down in the middle of the river. So these are going to be the biggest rocks, the heaviest rocks, and the slipperiest rocks. New word for you there. These are the worst rocks to pick up. Like there's bad rocks to pick up, and there's really bad. These are the extremely bad rocks to pick up. So they're to take these rocks and place them on the edge where they're going to sleep that night before they enter into the promised land. Note that in this story they're told to place them as a memorial so that when their kids ask, why are these here, they would have an answer. Now, I don't know about you. I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for what I find to be true in our family with our children. If we don't talk about the past, they don't care to hear it. But if we have something that makes them ask a question, they will sit and listen to whatever we have to tell them one time. See, we have a rule in our house, and it started, I'm not ashamed to say this because it doesn't apply to me yet, but it started with my mother. When Grandma tells a story the second time, we all have the right to hold up 2 fingers. This means I've heard this twice. Sometimes, we won't say who, but sometimes one person in our family will get the opportunity to hold up 5 fingers. Meaning somebody, no names, somebody has told that story too many times. But my favorite is when we've told a story a couple of times to remember what happened in our lives, and the kids interrupt us and tell the rest of the story. A story they never knew, never would have known if we didn't tell them. And now they're repeating it. It's their own story. Sometimes the facts are a little off, but it's their story now. So, setting up these rocks was God's way of saying, when your kids ask why these rocks are here, you'll have a story. Now, this just kind of blows my mind, and I just want to sit this one down and let you deal with it on your own. I'm going to walk away from it. An entire country crosses a flood stage river on dry land that is so dry they can pick up river rocks and carry them to the other side, and they need something to help them remember it. Okay. Anybody have any trouble remembering exactly where you were on 9/11? All right, just that back row. That's nice. Thanks for your help. I don't have any trouble remembering where I was. I believe that the Israelite leaders shouldn't have had any trouble remembering the time that the Jordan River stopped and they walked safely on dry land. Maybe, just maybe, this shows how hard-headed and foolish the Israelites were. But enough about that. It was also to serve as a way to educate the next generation. Now, I imagine that there would be a time where a 3rd or 4th generation would come out to the Jordan River to fish or do laundry or whatever. You pick the task. And come out and run upon these rocks for the first time and go, what's this here for? And somebody else tells the story that wasn't living when the river stopped. And this is how God's miracle goes from one generation to the next. It's hard for me to believe that we wouldn't remember major miracles that happen in our lives. And then I think how much we put aside our thought of our breath, our country of origin, this roof as scary as it is, it's raining hard outside right now and you don't know it. This roof is a miracle of its own. The people that have mopped up the water that came through this roof at any given time know this roof, all on its own, is a miracle. The fact that we would forget that is beyond me. But we do it. And that's why we have to set up these memorials, this Memorial Day. Because we have a hard time remembering what God has done. Now, Memorial Day, to remembering what God has done for us, it's kind of a leap. So I want to show you some differences and some similarities. If you're a geometry person or a problem solver, you've seen this chart before. This is my key way to solving problems. I'll use this chart over and over and over again. This is how the Ministerial Association got so large in the city. This graph right here. Because we started putting the religions of this community together all in one room, and we said, what do we have in common? What can we put together and say, we can work together on these things? Because if we focus on the differences, it's going nowhere. But if we focus on our similarities, we can find something there. So I wanted you to see that for two reasons. First, now you understand a little bit about how my mind works, which is a scary thing. And second, so that you can make this leap with me. So this picture here is it's in France, in Normandy. And the reason that I pulled this picture out is because there's thousands of memorial stones there that are shaped in the shape of crosses. The reason that we have this is because when the Allied forces went onto the beach in Normandy, the first day of D-Day, our troops, 5,000 of them, lost their lives taking that one beach. This memorial is of those troops. I think it's important that we set up a memorial in the point of crisis. That wherever something happens, that we set a memorial up there. And that's kind of what in our scripture passage today, what they did. They said, right here on the bank where we're going to make camp tonight, we're setting a memorial so that we'll remember that this river wasn't easy to cross. This memorial in Normandy reminds us that it cost us 5,000 lives to take that beach. I think it's important that we remember that we're indebted to those men. Sorry, ladies, there were only men then. I'm using this one reference. 5,000 men lost their life preserving freedom. Now, they didn't lose the 18, 19, 20-year-old life that was gung-ho and ready to run into battle. They lost that life, yes, for sure. But they also lost the life at home, the life of a dad, the life of a husband, the life of a granddad, the life of the old veteran who told you so many stories about their time in battle. They gave up all of that to preserve our freedom. These memorial graves, the stones representing soldiers that died for us. But I tell you what, that's a pretty dramatic scene. 5,000 stones in one yard. But I guarantee you that when our children see this, we have an opportunity to say, that beach cost a lot, but it was worth it. That beach saved our freedom. That offensive action saved us from a terrible future. It's easy for us to say that we shouldn't run off to foreign countries and protect people who don't like us or care about us. But it's another thing to say that it's a little bit our job to look out for our friends, our neighbors. And I'll just stretch it just a little bit further for you. Anyone who lives on this planet is our brother or our sister. See, when we forget these terrible times in history, then we're likely to repeat them. I believe that it would be very difficult for someone, say like a Hitler type person, to come to power and have that much influence over people today. Because World War II is easy for us to remember. And we can say, we don't want to experience that again. So as soon as one person starts segmenting out this group of people that they don't want to be here anymore, the entire world should stand up and say, that won't work. That's not going to happen. And we'll stop it. See, when we look over these fields, we remember what the soldiers did for us. But we also have this time to pause and remember all that God has done for us. In our text, a few people, specifically 12, represented an entire country. They were sent to pick up these stones and carry them off. In our day right now, we have these 5 symbols that would kind of represent the same thing. Or maybe we would have, depending on the way you look at history, we could switch from this 5 and switch to each governor of each state or province. But it's their responsibility to protect and make sure that the people that live free here will continue to live free here. Now, these 12 in the text, they did the work that God called them to do. They picked up these stones and they put them where they were supposed to. But there was a little bit of saving the nation or labor that happened there. Much like our armed forces do. By putting out the memorials, they opened up the conversation to remember what we came out of, remember what we left, remember how we were enslaved, remember how we had to wander in the desert all, we couldn't find our way home. If one of those guys would have looked at a map, nothing. Okay, I'll leave that there. So these few people set up the memorial, and we have our own memorials to remind us what these stones mean. If you go to Washington, D.C., you see memorial after memorial. That's kind of the hub of all the memorials in our country. And looking out at them, it's breathtaking. I remember the first time that I went to D.C., I took a group of 80 of my closest friends under the age of 13 to D.C. to just kind of look around. And we had this moment where we told them, tomorrow we're going to the mall. And they were so excited, tomorrow we're going to the mall, it's going to be such a fun day. And then somebody had to break it to them that the mall that we were going to, there wouldn't be much for sale. There would be a lot to look at. We use those memorials as education pieces to explain what this president did and what this fighting force did and all the things that went into making their freedom possible. We have the, did I put that in there? This is it's a picture of the World War II monument from, well, I shouldn't tell you where it's from, but you're not allowed to take pictures from where I was. Anyway, that's a cool picture. I just remembered that we were streaming, so. This memorial is reminder to the incredible sacrifice that went into maintaining the freedom around the world. Freedom not only to talk to whoever you want to, or to post whatever you want on the internet, but freedom to worship what God has done. So this leads to the second memorial that Joshua set up. He was instructed to create another monument, one you can't go visit, one you can't see, but the people that were there knew that it was there and why it was there. There was 12 more stones put in the center of the Jordan River, stacked up to remind them that's where the altar nearly sat down. That's where the defeat could have happened. That's the point where if they didn't go any further, they were definitely going back to captivity. Without this cross, they have no life. The same is true for us. Without this cross, we have no life. Joshua set up this memorial in the middle of the river so that people would remember that is where God really came through. The cemetery in Normandy is a memorial to the site of the World War II crisis. It's put right where the crisis happened. And if we didn't take that beach, we likely lose the war. We likely are all speaking a different language, and we likely are not gathered together in this room. Memorial Day is a time for us to remember. To remember what was fought for, those who died fighting for it, and what was saved. We can put this into two different contexts. What was fought for was freedom. What was won on the cross was freedom. What was final was the sacrifice. The price was paid for your freedom. Your freedom to call out to God, to worship Him, to know the miracles, to know there's such a difference between I think and I know. I heard it in a movie, and I couldn't remember the movie. I'm sure that Pastor Mike will correct me later and tell me that I got the quote wrong and tell me what movie it was. But there's a quote in a movie that says, there's only two things that were ever willing to die for you. One was a U.S. Marine, and the other was Jesus Christ. Now the line after that is the one that I shouldn't say. But what he said after that, since I like to push boundaries, what he said after that, he said, the Marines own your body, and God owns your soul. He said, I'm going to teach you how to be a Marine. You deal with God on your own. Theology's wrong, but the point still remains. That Jesus was willing to die so that you would have the opportunity to live your life. We have to set up these memorials because we too are a stiff-necked people who look away from all that God has done for us. Today I would encourage you to set this afternoon aside to make specific time to remember all that God has done, the price that was paid by Jesus, and how you react to that. Do you react in awe? Do you react in worship? Or do you react in surrender? Because if we don't react in surrender, we kind of miss the point and we miss the value of the sacrifice of Jesus. His blood was spilled. No different than our soldiers, with one exception. He died so that we don't have to. He died so that we would have the opportunity to call on the Father. Jesus stands there in the throne room even today, speaking on our behalf to his Father, saying, that one's mine, that one's mine, that one's mine. My blood has covered them. But if that's not true for you today, I would say, follow this path. That if you know that you can hold on to just a little bit of the life that Jesus called, you can also hold on to all of it. He gives each one of us arms just big enough to wrap around him and to hold on tight. Today I encourage you to do just that. To wrap on, hold tight, and remember the sacrifice that's been made. Would you pray with me? Father, we gather here today to remember all that you sent your Son to do. Lord, we know that Jesus made this sacrifice so that we would not have to. Lord, help us to use the sacrifice of Jesus to draw us closer. Help us to not abuse the sacrifice of Jesus for our own gain. And allow us to hold on to him. Father, today, if we have any thought that is not completely surrendered to you, we ask that you would shine a light on it, that you would make it right to us, to the people around us, that this is an area we have to get control of. And help us to be courageous enough to surrender everything and hold on to you. And we ask all this in Jesus' name.